What got you interested in professional wrestling? Was it just something you watched, on your own, or did you have friends that watched with you, got you into it?
So how I got interested in professional wrestling was I was never allowed to watch it as a kid. My
Hmm.
mom said no, but when I was growing up, it was the Attitude Era, so I
All
kind of
right.
get it. I would go. I had a particular set of friends that they watched it all the time, and I would sneak over to their house, and that's how I would get to watch wrestling. So that's how that worked for me. I remember with the little bit I did catch here and there, Chyna was always my favorite. Rest in peace.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. It was kind of when I was younger. I want to say I was around like 9, 10, 11 when I was watching it. Then it kind of tapered off for a while. And then when I moved from Seattle to Philadelphia to go to college, um, that's how I kind of so it's just kind of a roundabout convoluted story how I ever ended up training. Um and I don't know if that's where you wanted my question to go, but I'm
No,
headed
no,
that way.
of
So here we
course.
go. um, I ended up moving from Seattle to Philadelphia to go to college. I went to University of the Arts in Philadelphia for dance education. So while I was going to school there, I got an after school job working at a haunted house that happened to be right behind the ECW arena, just happenstance. Um, because I was working there and was working with just like Philly kids, it wasn't college kids because none of us were from Philly, but the kids working in the haunted house were. I ended up making a really good friend. Her name is Melissa. We're still best friends to this day. And she took me to a wrestling show. Um, and that's kind of how that all happened. When I went to the show, because I didn't know there was anything other than WWE until that moment.
Oh yeah.
Because I was completely ignorant to it.
Yeah.
Um, that
All kinds of promotions.
yeah, no, it's like once that door opens, but
Hmm.
so I remember she was like, "Do you want to go to the show, like wrestling show with me?" And I was like, "Oh, like WWF." I didn't even know there was a name change like that. She's like, "No, no, not like that at all. Totally different." Because I want to say it was a CZW show we ended up at, but and so totally different. And I ended up going to a show with her. Through her, I ended up meeting Drew Gulak because I don't know, she knows everybody. So I ended up meeting Drew Gulak and then getting into the conversation about training, and the rest is history.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you really defied authority there, getting into the yeah, not letting your mom, sneaking to watch it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was like the hotbed. In terms of pop culture for pro wrestling. I mean, so many people got into it. Men, women, kids. I mean, it was a crazy time. I mean, not just for the WWE, but you had WCW around, you had ECW, you had all the indie promotions, wrestling was on television and the media, it was crazy. It was nonstop. Everywhere you looked there was wrestling going on. That
Hmm.
had to, taking it all in, man, was I bet it was a lot.
It was. It definitely was. But I mean, hey, I'm still here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, China definitely was a pioneer in terms of women in wrestling and how um she was just such a wonderful, not only great character but a great human being as well. From what I had heard and read, but she definitely changed the way a woman should be portrayed, I guess. She was doing all these sorts of things. She was competing for world championships, intercontinental titles, managing probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time and Triple H, and working with Eddie Guerrero and all these different things. So she definitely was an icon. Um, you know, Definitely a great influence for sure. For anyone, not just women, but men too. Anyone. I mean, she really changed the
yeah.
landscape of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I mean, it's part of why I became the wrestler that I did and why I fought so hard for and still do for intergender wrestling and why that's because watching China, she was in there beating up the dudes. And so I was like, that's what I want to do. And they were like, but you're China was like, you're 5'3", Kim, like calm down. It's like, I'm gonna do it. And I did. So
Do you feel intergender wrestling should be a normal thing, or should it happen often? Do you feel it should be a
I
side
think it
thing?
no, I think it should be completely normal. I'm very much for the equal rights, equal fights. If
Hmm.
you, uh, and it comes to the fact of like, I don't know, like it just gives so much more like we're a performance art if you really want to break it down. The way I look at wrestling and it when you add that story element, it brings so much more that you can do, in my opinion. And just it's like watching a Wonder Woman movie or something like that where she's beating up it's the perfect story. The underdog beats this giant villain, the David and Goliath.
Hmm.
You see it everywhere. And I don't know, I really like that story and I can
Yeah,
watch that story be told over
the
and over and
classic
over again.
stories. Yes.
And so I think that people get a little too serious with wrestling sometimes. Like, I
Hmm.
know it is a serious thing, somewhat, like we're meant to make it serious, but at the same time, it's one of the things where you can suspend your disbelief and go outside of reality for a minute, and the princess can beat the giant. Like,
Yeah.
it's a cool
Yeah.
thing, and so I think it should be a regular thing and shouldn't be frowned upon or
Hmm.
considered domestic violent because it's not. We're a
Yeah.
performance art, we're stunt athletes, we're
Hmm.
sports entertainment. It's different,
Right.
so
Right.
let it
Right.
be different.
Yeah.